Well, following Libya's decision to halt military action and the ongoing unrest in the Middle East, the turmoil is once again having an impact on the price of oil. But what for the future of the region? Well, joining me now is a Middle East expert and author of Power and Politics in the Persian Gulf Monarchies, Christopher Davidson. Thank you very much indeed for joining us today. If we could start with events in Libya, they've been fast-moving and momentous. There does seem to be a degree of scepticism around what Colonel Qaddafi has said today. Does that ring true with you, that this may be a move?
Yes, I think so. We're having some reports from people on the ground in Benghazi that some shelling has continued, and also Misrata, the other rebel-held city in the western province of Libya. So the next 24 hours, I think, will be quite telling as to whether Gaddafi is actually true to his words and motions. I think really now that there's a threat of actual airstrikes, not just a no-fly zone, Gaddafi might be running scared.
Now, what we've seen is also Colonel Gaddafi saying that a lot of the European oil manufacturers will be kicked out of the country in the future, and Asian ones brought in. This is the kind of policy that he's had in the past, hasn't he, where he's favoured one group of countries over another?
Well, absolutely. We mustn't forget Gaddafi himself came to power in 1969 on the back of an Arab nationalist revolution that really removed a Western-backed king and his multinational oil concessions, notably British and French. So Gaddafi really for many years had national oil companies. It's only quite recently that he's allowed Western oil companies into the country. If he were to remain in power, clearly with this no-fly zone and the clear condemnation from Cameron, Sarkozy, etc., there's no way Gaddafi would tolerate a strong Western presence in the country ever again.
Now, David Cameron, speaking just minutes ago, has said that Libya cannot become another Iraq. It does seem that while this no-fly zone and indeed the airstrikes needed to set it up are now in place, that the West is making it very clear that they do not want on-the-ground intervention, and indeed they want this to be led by Arab states. How important is that? I
think it's extremely important. The lessons have been learned from Iraq, hopefully. If there were to be actual Western forces on the ground in Libya, this might delegitimise the revolutionary movement and the attempts to set up a genuine indigenous democratic government. I think really the no-fly zone, but a very properly enforced one, is the best way to go. Again, we mustn't forget that one of the reasons that King Idris was removed in 1969 was because of his very overt, close links to Western powers.
If we move on to Bahrain, we've seen tremendously tumultuous events there today. They've cleared away the square. The protest leaders are now in jail. Does it look like the royal family there has done enough to quell the problems in Bahrain?
No, this is a terrible set of decisions in Bahrain by the ruling Al Khalifa dynasty. Clearly they panicked on Sunday when the protesters moved from the symbolic Pearl Roundabout to block off the financial district. They called in the Saudis, so the Bahraini protests will just intensify as a result of this. There have been more deaths at the hands of the Bahraini, Saudi, UAE coalition, whatever we want to call it, that's trying to keep the dynasty in power. Today we even have a funeral taking place, which will probably act as another rallying point for the protests.
We're seeing pictures now of the square being bulldozed. To what extent do you believe that this is being backed by Iran? Because there is a bigger picture playing out here with Saudi and Iran, Bahrain almost being a pawn in a much bigger game.
Well, I think there's certainly been a scam that's being pulled by the Bahraini rulers to try and convince the Western community that this is primarily a sectarian conflict and that Iran is somehow trying to install some kind of Islamic theocracy on the doorstep of the world's major oil and gas fields. I think really this is a protest much like those elsewhere in the Middle East, where an oppressed class who just happen to be the Shia are trying to remove their elites from power who just happen to be Sunni. Iran certainly is viewing this event favourably, given that it very much is a kick in the teeth for the Saudis and the other Gulf monarchs next door. But then again, I don't think the Bahraini protesters particularly want or need direct Iranian involvement.
Now, if we look what's happened in Saudi Arabia, we've seen today that there's a kind of a cash bonanza for the Saudis. Is it possible for the Saudi rulers to simply buy their way out of this situation and therefore avoid the protests we've seen elsewhere?
I don't think so. I think only two Gulf states can really do this, Qatar and the United Arab Emirates, where they have very small populations and extremely high GDPs. In Saudi, they have increased the subsidies. The King's speech today, we saw he's throwing more money at this problem. Saudi has a big population. It takes a long time for that wealth to trickle down to the population. There's a lot of unrest on the cards in Saudi Arabia, almost no means for people to have a voice. It's looking very dangerous to me.
It looks like the contagion here is not over yet. Are we in the middle of a slow burn revolution across the whole of the Middle East?
I think so, yes. We have a situation here where very intense modernizing forces such as Facebook, Twitter, social media, satellite television are modernizing forces that the regimes can no longer control, censor or co-opt. There's very little they can do about this. So they're now being exposed as having only really two strategies in their pocket: bribe or threat. From Saudi Arabia, we've seen both of those on the same day.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us
Thank
and
you.
sharing your insights with us today. Thank you.